The opulent, airy confines of the Newman Enterprises office were a world away from the cozy, bohemian chaos of Crimson Lights, but for Sharon Collins, it felt more like a prison than any place with bars ever had. The scent of expensive leather and high-end cleaning products, usually a perfume of power and success, now seemed to choke the very air from her lungs. She stood frozen, a single printed email trembling in her hand, the name at the bottom of the message burning into her vision like a brand. Matt Clark. Sharon? Are you even listening to me? Nick Newman's voice, usually a source of such comfort and strength, sounded distant, muffled as if by water. She couldn't tear her eyes away from the name. It was just 2 words, 10 letters in total, but they held the power to unravel the intricate, hard-won tapestry of her life. To Nick, to her family, to all of Genoa City, Matt Clark was a ghost, a non-entity. But to Sharon, he was the architect of her deepest shame, the living embodiment of a chapter she had tried so desperately to burn and bury. He was the key that could unlock a box containing a monster she had fought for decades to keep caged, her own fractured past. The man from the shadows. Who is Matt Clark? To understand the seismic terror that the name Matt Clark evokes in Sharon, one must journey back to a time before Newman dramas, before the Rosales family, before even the foundational tumult of her marriages to Nick and Victor. One must travel to the small, suffocating town of Madison, Wisconsin, and into the troubled heart of a young Sharon Newman, then just Sharon Carlson. Matt Clark was not a boyfriend. He was not a fleeting crush or a bad date. He was, for a terrifying and formative period, her stepfather. He entered her life when she was a vulnerable teenager, a time when the absence of her own father left a gaping wound that craved male validation and stability. Her mother, Doris, swept off her feet by Matt's calculated charm and seemingly solid demeanor, saw a savior. Sharon, with the keen intuition of a child whose world had already been fractured, saw something else lurking behind his easy smile, a predatory stillness, a need for control that was absolute. The man the world saw was a mid-level manager, a churchgoer, a pillar of bland Midwestern respectability. The man Sharon lived with was a manipulator of the highest order. His abuse was rarely physical. Fists were too crude, too easily discovered. Matt Clark's weapon of choice was psychological terror. He was a master of gaslighting, of twisting reality until Sharon doubted her own perceptions, her own memories, her own sanity. He would criticize her appearance, her friends, her dreams, then feign hurt confusion when she recoiled, accusing her of being overly sensitive or dramatic. He isolated her from her mother, subtly turning Doris against her by painting Sharon as a rebellious, ungrateful liar. He created an environment where she was constantly walking on eggshells, where the wrong look, the wrong tone, the mere act of existing could invoke his cold, seething displeasure. He made her feel small, worthless, and utterly trapped. He was the omnipresent critic in her head, the voice that told her she was never good enough, a voice that would, decades later, find a chilling echo in the machinations of a man like Victor Newman. When Sharon finally escaped Madison for the bright lights and bigger problems of Genoa City, it was an act of sheer survival. She shed the skin of that victimized girl, building a new identity as Sharon Newman, a wife, a mother, a businesswoman. She packed the memory of Matt Clark away in the deepest, darkest corner of her psyche, locked it with a heavy bolt, and threw away the key. He was a phantom from a life she had incinerated behind her. Or so she thought. The anatomy of a panic. Why so much fear? On the surface, one might ask, why would a successful, grown woman, a matriarch in her own right, be so terrified of a man from her distant past? The answer lies in the unique and devastating nature of the trauma he inflicted and the precarious house of cards her present life represents. The return of the architect. Matt Clark is not just a bad memory. He is the original architect of her deepest insecurities. Her entire life in Genoa City, for all its drama and chaos, has been a rebellion against his narrative of her. Her struggles with mental health, her sometimes disastrous choices in men, her fierce, often flawed, protectiveness of her children. All of them can be traced back to the cracks he put in her foundation. His return threatens to reduce the formidable Sharon Newman back into that helpless, terrified girl in Madison, invalidating every ounce of strength she has fought to cultivate. The threat of exposure. Sharon's life is a mosaic of secrets, some her own, some entrusted to her. She is the keeper of Genoa City's most dangerous truths. The idea of Matt Clark, a man who knows her most primal shame, interacting with her world is paralyzing. What would he say to Nick, who sees her as his resilient, if complicated, soulmate? What would he reveal to her children, who view her as their rock? He possesses a knowledge of a Sharon that no one in her current life has ever seen, a version she is mortified to acknowledge. His mere presence is a threat to expose the raw, unhealed nerve she has spent a lifetime concealing beneath a veneer of California chic and hard-won wisdom. The trigger for the monster within. Sharon has battled mental health issues, including a diagnosis of bipolar disorder and the terrifying dissociative identity disorder that once manifested as the alter Sharon. While she has worked tirelessly to achieve stability, the trauma Matt Clark represents is the ultimate trigger. The fear that his reemergence could destabilize her, could awaken old demons and shatter the fragile peace she has constructed, is a fear that goes beyond social embarrassment. It is a fear for her very sanity, for the cohesive self she has fought so hard to maintain. The ghost in the present. The looming threat. The email in her hand was not from Matt Clark himself. It was from a lawyer in Madison, polite and formal, stating that Mr. Clark, now elderly and in declining health, was seeking to reconnect with family and had named Sharon as his sole next of kin for certain medical and financial decisions. It was a bureaucratic missive, but to Sharon, it was a declaration of war. Her mind, ever creative in its leaps toward catastrophe, immediately began painting worst-case scenarios. Was this a ploy? A final, cruel manipulation from a man who never truly let anything go? Was he dying and seeking absolution? Or worse, seeking to unburden himself of more poisonous truths on his deathbed? Or was he simply alone and, in his isolation, reaching for the one person he had successfully controlled, hoping to reassert that control one last time? The thought of him in Genoa City, sitting in her patio at Crimson Lights, shaking Nick's hand, looking at her children with his cold, assessing eyes, it was unthinkable. It would be a contamination of her sanctuary. The safe haven she had built, first with Nick, then on her own, and now within her blended, chaotic, but loving family, would be irrevocably violated. She imagined the conversations, the explanations she would have to give. "Nick, this is Matt Clark, my stepfather. No, we weren't close. He spent my formative years systematically dismantling my self-esteem in ways I'm still unpacking in therapy. Faith, honey, this is your grandfather figure. Pay no attention to the way." It was impossible. The chasm between the reality of her past with him and the narrative of her present life was too vast to bridge. A fear forged in fire and ice. Sharon's fear is not the simple fear of an unpleasant reunion. It is a profound existential terror. Matt Clark represents the one battle she never truly won. She outmaneuvered Victor Newman. She survived cancer. She weathered countless betrayals and heartbreaks, but the psychological war waged by her stepfather was one she only escaped by running away. She never confronted him. She never got closure. She simply left, carrying the scars. His sudden reemergence threatens to undo all that. It forces her to face the one opponent she could never truly beat, because his victory was not in winning a fight, but in making her believe she was never capable of fighting back in the first place. As she finally looked up at Nick, her face pale, her eyes wide with a panic he hadn't seen in years, the carefully constructed walls of Sharon Newman seemed to shudder. The strong, empathetic, resilient woman the city had come to know was, in that moment, just a girl from Madison again, staring into the eyes of the monster under her bed, a monster who had just learned her new address. The question hanging in the air between her and Nick was no longer, who is Matt Clark? The real question, the one that would dictate the next great crisis of her life, was whether the strength she had found in Genoa City was finally enough to slay the dragon that had haunted her from the very beginning, or if the ghost of her past was finally powerful enough to destroy the future she had sacrificed everything to build. The battle for Sharon's soul, it seemed, was not yet over. Its original general had just returned to the field. The Young and the Restless, YNR, spoilers update for Tuesday, November 4th, reveals that Claire Newman, Haley Aaron, will spark some panic while Holden Novak, Nathan Owens, hides Audra Charles's Zuleika Silver, LA arrival. For starters, Claire's ability to make good decisions will be called into question. Nikki Newman, Melody Thomas Scott, will grow deeply troubled over Claire's link to Holden and the risky move she's making in Los Angeles. Claire ran away from all her Kyle Abbott, Michael Mueller problems and has been having a blast with Holden, but she's still suffering from a torn heart deep down. Nikki may fear that Claire will take things too far with Holden and find herself unable to get back on track with Kyle. Claire already enjoyed a bedroom romp with Holden, so Nikki may put the puzzle pieces together on that. Whether Nikki voices her concerns to Claire, Victoria Newman, Amelia Heinley, or both, she'll indeed fret over her granddaughter. While Claire's actions spark some panic for Nikki, great news is ahead for Nick Newman, Joshua Morrow, and Sharon Newman, Sharon Case. Sharon and Nick will take a timeout on tackling the latest Matt Clark aka Mitch Bacall, Roger Howarth, mystery since Noah Newman Lucas Adams is about to awaken. Lucas Adams will finally make his first appearance in the role, so it'll be interesting to see his spin on Noah as he settles in. Noah will still have his bandages on at first, but those will be removed before long. YNR spoilers say Noah will be disoriented when he emerges from his coma, but Nick, Sharon, and his doctors will be there to help him make sense of his current situation. Next, Audra will arrive in Los Angeles and cross paths with Holden, but he'll apparently keep quiet about her showing up in town. Of course, Holden will continue to keep Audra's past secrets quiet as well. That'll be partly about protecting Audra, and partly about protecting himself, since Holden helped clean up her mess years ago. The Young and the Restless spoilers say Audra will eventually stir up some trouble at the Shadow Room, so stay tuned for updates on all the twists and turns. The Young and the Restless, YNR, spoilers recap for Friday, October 18th, reveals that the show will celebrate the 30th anniversary of Michelle Stafford's first episode as Phyllis Summers, so there'll be tons of flashbacks and moments from her history. However, YNR will kick things off with Phyllis's theory, since she'll suggest Sharon Newman, Sharon Case, might have been the one to frame Daniel Romalotti Jr., Michael Graziadei. Daniel, Summer Newman, Allison Lanier, and Lucy Romalotti, Lily Brooks O'Brien, will listen to Phyllis's perspective on the situation in the park. Phyllis will point out that Sharon claims she visited Heather Stevens' Vale Bloom on her last night alive and that she gave this bogus story to the cops about Heather's fight with Daniel. Daniel will think it's a stretch to accuse Sharon of eliminating Heather and setting him up to take the fall for it. Although Daniel won't think Sharon has a reasonable motive for that, Phyllis will suggest maybe things got out of hand and ended in a tragic accident. Phyllis will highlight Sharon's mental instability and point out it wouldn't be the first time Sharon put someone in harm's way. After Phyllis blames Sharon for putting her in a coma, she'll note that Sharon took out Cameron Kirsten, Lyndon Ashby, even if it was in self-defense. Daniel will feel like Phyllis's history with Sharon is clouding her judgment, but Phyllis will insist that's not the case despite some rivalry flashbacks. That said, Phyllis will understand Daniel's concerns about her overreacting and going off the rails considering her past. Lucy will be curious, so Phyllis will tell her some stories, including some about her romantic histories with Danny Romalotti, Michael Damian, Nick Newman, Joshua Morrow, and Jack Abbott, Peter Bergman. Phyllis will talk about losing custody of Daniel and reconnecting with him as a teenager before spilling the story of Summer's tumultuous elevator birth. We'll also see Phyllis reflect on her infamous octopus bed trick and some of her wacky disguises over the years, but so there'll be a nice mix of memories to honor Michelle Stafford in this standalone episode. Phyllis will ultimately circle back to Sharon since her internal radar will be going off. Daniel and Summer will know they can't talk Phyllis out of gathering information, but Daniel will still warn her not to go undercover or go against the police. Phyllis will promise to be careful and will vow to prove Daniel is innocent. After Phyllis makes a prediction about them getting through this together as a family, she'll share a group hug with Daniel, Summer and Lucy. The Young and the Restless spoilers say Phyllis's investigation could lead to bad news for Sharon, so we'll bring you updates on all the chaos she could unleash. The Young and the Restless. YNR. Spoilers reveal that if there's one thing Summer Newman, Allison Lanier, learned from Harrison Abbott's Reading Munsell kidnapping ordeal, it's how much she loves being his mom. Harrison may not be Summer's child biologically, but she couldn't love him more if she'd given birth to him. That said, Summer might actually want to get pregnant and go through that whole experience at some point. Since Summer didn't get to raise Harrison when he was an infant, she might want a baby of her own down the road. Chance Chancellor, Connor Floyd, has some medical issues that prevented him from serving as the sperm donor during Abby Newman Abbott's Melissa Ordway surrogacy storyline, but Devin Hamilton Winters, Brighton James, stepped up instead. That obviously led to a ton of YNR conflict since Devin bonded with Dominic Newman Winters Chancellor Abbott, Rain and River Ware, and wanted to be a real father to him. The Young and the Restless. YNR, recap and spoilers for Monday, January 22nd state the soap will start the week off on an explosive note. The show opens with Heather Stevens, Vale Bloom, visiting Daniel Romalotti's Michael Graziadei apartment. The two have a lot to talk about, especially since Heather dropped the L word the other night. Heather lays her feelings out all on the line to Daniel. She notes she means what she says about falling back in love with him. While she doesn't want anyone to get hurt, she also doesn't want to pass up the opportunity of a second chance with her and Daniel. Not only for their love, but for their family's sake. She asks Daniel if he's in love with Lily Winters, Crystal Khalil, and he notes he cares for her very much, but they haven't gotten there yet. She asks him if he sees a future with Lily, and he notes he's not quite sure. The two end their scenes together on Monday's show, looking into each other's eyes, sharing a passionate kiss, and almost embracing. And then they do lots more, going wild. Across town, Victoria Newman Amelia Heinley is picking up food at Society when she runs into her mom Nikki Newman, Melody Thomas Scott. While she's in a hurry, she just takes some time to catch up with her mom. She updates Nikki on Claire Grace's, Haley Aaron progress, and their hug, but also shares concerns about Victor Newman's, Eric Braden, meeting with Cole Howard J. Eddie Peck. Victoria states that she's upset with how her dad is bugging Cole, and she made it clear she has no romantic intentions with him. They both just want to help Claire with her trauma recovery. Nikki notes that Victor is just concerned about Victoria, but Victoria believes he needs to trust her more. Speaking of the mustache, he's with Adam Newman, Mark Grossman, at Newman Enterprises. The two have a great meeting together, and he commends him on a job well done. Adam notes he couldn't have done it without Nick Newman, Joshua Morrow, and even Victor can see the different energy they have working together this time around. Adam states he wants to prove himself and have fun with the CEO job, as long as it lasts. After all bets will be off once Vicky returns. Victor assures him that if continues to be successful, things will all fall into place, and he won't be left out to dry. The topic of Sally Spectra, Courtney Hope, comes up and their romantic reunion. Victor notes he doesn't believe that Sally is good enough for him or Nick, but the heart wants what the heart wants, and he trusts his judgment. Adam happily considers this as Victor blessing their relationship and decides to meet up with Sally. Over at Crimson, Nick and Sally run into each other. They make some small talk for a bit, but things take a nicer turn. Nick notes that Sally being with Adam at Sharon Newman's Sharon Case launch party for Cassidy 1 wasn't just a one-off. The redhead acknowledges that she and Adam are moving toward a reunion. Nick notes he's happy for her, and she apologizes for the pain she caused him. The two in their chat with a hug and decide it's time to move on and be friends. Of course, Sharon is standing behind the bar at Crimson and witnesses this. After Sally leaves, Sharon asks Nick if he's okay. She can tell Sally hurt him more than he'd admit. He says he's just scared that Adam will end up hurting Sally in the end. He truly hopes this time will be different, and Adam will change and refrain from his toxic ways. Still, Sharon points out that love is always a risk. Nick states that the thought of falling in love is daunting for him. After everything that's happened and almost losing his loved ones, thanks to Cameron Kirsten, Lyndon Ashby, and Jordan's Colleen Zenk antics, all he cares about is being the best dad ever and his family. Sharon agrees that falling in love right now is just too much. Her focus is her kids and her company. They smile at each other, and Nick invites her out to lunch. Back at Society, Adam is there with Sally and updates her on the fact that Victor has given them his stamp of approval. Sally is pleasantly surprised, and they share a kiss, just as Sharon and Nick arrive for their lunch. It may have been awkward, but Nick shrugs it off. He and Sally are friends now, and things are going well working with Adam. The couples play nice and acknowledge each other, and it looks like there's a new era of good tidings between the four of them. Adam looks over at Sharon and Nick and notes how no matter what the two have been through, there's an element of fate that always brings them back together. Meanwhile, Victoria pays her dad a visit at his office and basically tells him to stop bugging Cole. She assures him she's not looking for romance, but Victor fears that she could get hurt. She asks him to trust her, to which he agrees. She also requests that he accept Claire as a Newman once she comes to town. He's hesitant on this one, as he believes she could be a master manipulator. She was raised by Jordan, after all. Victoria insists he has faith in her instincts, and shockingly, Victor promises that if Claire is successful in her treatment, then he'll give her a chance when she comes to the little town. The very last scene of the show shows Claire in her darkened room sleeping. She's awakened by a stern Nicky looking over her bed. Y&R spoilers say the drama between Claire and her Newman grandparents may not let up, and easing into the family could be far harder than anyone anticipated. Chance's doctor let him know that his issues could correct themselves eventually, but what if they don't? Would Chance be willing to deal with another messy sperm donor situation, especially if Summer perhaps wants to ask Kyle Abbott Michael Mueller? Chance may not be on board with Summer further tying herself to Kyle, particularly since the exes could end up co-parenting both Harrison and his younger sibling. It's not like Summer and Chance are very far along in their relationship, so Chance might bow out if he feels like Summer's desire for another child is going to be a problem for them as a couple. Of course, it's possible a breakup could happen before Summer even comes up with a potential second kid suggestion. Now that Connor Floyd is off contract, the show may plan on pushing Chance out of Summer's life. That could leave Summer feeling more drawn to Kyle and the family they've created, so she could ask him to be a sperm donor and add another little one to the mix. However, that could complicate Kyle's budding romance with Claire Grace, Haley Aaron, so there'd be a lot of places to go with a storyline like this. Our predictions hint that Summer, Kyle, and Claire could have a love triangle ahead, so stay tuned for all the drama. The Young and the Restless spoilers say Summer and Chance's relationship may not be meant to last, so stick with us for updates on whether she'll wind up hoping for some Kyle reunion news. The Bold and the Beautiful BNB spoilers recap for Tuesday, December 12th, reveals that Ridge Forrester, Torsten K., refused to let Eric Forrester, John McCook, suffer anymore and stood his ground on letting his father go. Brooke Logan, Catherine Kelly Lang, hinted that maybe Ridge should give Eric a chance, and Donna Logan, Jennifer Garais, definitely thought Ridge should move forward with the treatment if he loved his dad. Ridge was offended over Donna's words and made it clear that he was indeed doing this out of love for his father. Steffi Forrester, Jacqueline McInnes Wood, argued that they should be fighting for Eric, but Ridge insisted. The Young and the Restless, Y&R, recap and spoilers for Thursday, January 18th note another dramatic day in Genoa City. The show opens with Jack Abbott, Peter Bergman, and Diane Abbott, Susan Walters. Jack has something on his mind, and he wants to be transparent with his wife. He notes he has a friend who needs help and implies it's a woman who's a recovering addict. Jack goes on to tell Diane that he was once addicted to painkillers during a time when they were apart. He initially needed them due to complications after his gunshot wound, but eventually relied on them during his dark time. He states that Kyle Abbott, Michael Mueller, knew, and his efforts, along with the support of Neil Winters, Christophe St. John, and Phyllis Summers, Michelle Stafford, were what got him clean. Jack ends up telling Diane it's Nikki Newman, Melody Thomas Scott, who needs his help. She's back on the bottle, and to boot, her AA sponsor has fallen off the wagon. While Diane isn't overly pleased that Jack wants to help Nikki, considering their history, she does give her blessing for Jack to move forward. The fact that he wants to help out an old friend makes her love him even more. Over at Newman Media, Nikki's AA sponsor Seth, Brian Gaskell, is nervously waiting in her office. He gets up and starts sifting through her desk, just as she walks in. He apologizes for crossing a line, but he states he was doing so to ensure she didn't have any alcohol hidden anywhere. Nikki doesn't buy what he is selling and accuses him of relapsing. He denies it at first, but she states she sees all the signs. Scrambling, he comes up with the idea that the two can be friends and help each other. Nikki declines the offer and encourages him to go to a meeting, reach out to his own sponsor, and get help. She makes it clear that her sobriety is fragile and can't be around him. He begs her to reconsider, because he needs a friend. Audra Charles, Zuleika Silver, accidentally walks in on them, as Nikki stands her ground for Seth to leave, and he does so. Audra hesitantly asks Nikki if everything is okay. It may not be any of her business, but Audra is genuinely concerned. Nikki and Audra have a bonding moment, as the Newman Media boss tells her subordinate that Seth was her AA sponsor who has relapsed, and she feels guilty for refusing to help him. She also acknowledges the story Audra told her about her dad the other day was helpful. Audra offers Nikki any kind of support at Newman Media she may need. Shortly after, Nikki gets an ominous text asking her to meet up. The mystery person ends up being Jack, as Nikki is shown later on at the Abbott mansion. He acknowledges he knows about her falling off the wagon, which he learned from Lauren. Nikki states that she understands her friend was worried, and that's why she told him. He makes a vow to become her support system, 24/7. Nikki refuses, but Jack insists. Nikki questions why he cares so much, and Jack relents that Nikki started drinking while they were married. Back then, he handled it poorly, and his guilt around all this increased over the years after his own battle with addiction. He wants to make things right by helping her now, and she seemingly accepts the help. Later, when she's back at her Newman Media office, she calls Lauren Fenmore, Tracy E. Bregman, telling her they need to talk. Meanwhile, at Society, Kyle runs into Tucker McCall, Trevor St. John. The two men banter back and forth and talk about Kyle punching Tucker the other day in Audra's hotel room. When they sit down at a table, Tucker antagonizes Kyle by complimenting him on his family loyalty. He points out that he knew Kyle was going to remain dedicated to the Abbotts, and all his plan was to whip the family into a frenzy, hoping they would turn on each other. Things turn dark, though, when Kyle mentions that Tucker doesn't have that same family dedication, as his own son isn't talking to him anymore. The only person he has any loyalty to is Audra, but even that is twisted. Tucker plays it cool but digs. There was a part of Kyle that was all in about aligning with him to screw over his family for that CEO job. Tucker walks away from the table by stating, "I'm still coming for you." Tucker ends up at the GCAC bar when Audra strolls in and finds a table. He joins her and apologizes. However, she makes it clear that she is cutting ties to distance herself from his toxicity. Tucker accepts that and guesses the two will only talk business, but she doesn't want to partake in that with him, either. Audra notes probably the biggest reason she no longer wants anything to do with him is because he won't let go of Ashley Abbott, Eileen Davidson. Audra feels that Ashley clouds his judgment, which is why the entire plan he had against the Abbotts failed. Tucker asks if he shouldn't be with Ashley, then who he should be with a smug smile. Audra replies that she still has enough self-respect to not say her name and that his ultimate fate might be that he ends up alone. Back to Kyle, he's joined at Society by his mom. The two talk about how Billy Abbott's, Jason Thompson, CEO spot still needs to be filled, and Kyle notes he doesn't want it anymore. He's enjoying where he is at the company, and his dad was right, he needs a lesson in humility. Kyle states he was so close to turning on his own family due to ego, obviously affected by Tucker's previous remark. Kyle believes Diane should be the CEO. Diane rejects that idea wholeheartedly and says her dream is for Jack and Kyle to run Jabot. Jack ends up joining them and is ready to tell them some big news. He's chosen his CEO candidate. Thinking he's going to name him Jabot CEO, Kyle interjects and says he's happy with where he's at and nominates his mom for the job. Jack replies with a remark that great minds think alike and announces he was thinking the very same thing. Diane and Jack laugh about it all, while the camera pans on Kyle's face, visibly disappointed with this new development. Young and the Restless spoilers imply the drama between the Abbotts is far from over, and fans should expect some dissension at Jabot when Diane is officially named the company's CEO. The Young and the Restless, YNR, Spoilers recap for Friday, December 22nd, reveals that Lauren Fenmore Baldwin, Tracy Bregman, will meet up with Christine Blair, Laura Lee Bell, to hand over a gift-wrapped Fenmore's purchase that Christine made for Danny Romalotti, Michael Damian. Lauren will wonder if Danny and Christine have made it out of the friend zone yet, but Christine won't want to jinx it by spilling too much. Once Michael Baldwin, Christian LeBlanc, comes along and sees the sparkle in Christine's eyes, he'll privately tell Lauren that he's all for whatever makes Christine happy, especially after what happened with Paul Williams, Doug Davison. Michael will have a holiday surprise for Lauren and will hand over a key to their favorite GCAC suite. As for the other gift in Michael's pocket, he'll suggest Lauren will have to wait until later to see it. Lauren will eventually make her way to the room and find that it's all decked out for a romantic Christmas Eve. After Michael appears, he'll make love to Lauren before it's gift exchange time. Michael will give Lauren a gorgeous ring and ask her to make him the happiest man alive by marrying him all over again. It turns out Lauren had the same idea since she'll give Michael a new wedding band and ask him to marry her all over again as well. Michael and Lauren will accept each other's proposals as they prepare to renew their vows. Once Christine,